4.7 million years ago, Earth belonged to monsters, clawed, fanged, and armored. They ruled the plains, while we cowered in the shadows. And somewhere among them was us, a fragile primate without claws, armor, or speed. We shouldn't have survived a single night, yet somehow, we did. The story of humanity isn't the story of strength. It's the story of weakness turned into power. Every scar in our DNA carries the memory of a creature that refused to die. This isn't the tale of cities or technology. This is the time before fire, before language, when staying alive for one more sunrise was a miracle. Before we became human, we had to become impossible. Tonight, we travel back to a world where every breath could be your last, and uncover how the weakest creature on Earth conquered a planet built to kill it. In this world, danger didn't sleep, it waited. Beneath the reeds, a giant python, the length of 3 men, coils silently, patient as death itself. Nearby, a young Australopithecus creeps toward the water's edge, unaware that every ripple hides a hunter older than memory. 4.7 million years ago, the air itself carried menace. The rivers hid jaws, the grass concealed claws, even the sky could kill. Massive crowned eagles capable of carrying off infants soared above the savannah. Every sound mattered. Every shadow had to be read like scripture. The saber-toothed cats were the apex assassins of this time. Muscle, stealth, and silence combined into one perfect engine of extinction. A single pounce could crush a skull, yet somehow, the fragile ones, our ancestors, kept finding ways to endure. They learned the habits of monsters. They watched. They remembered. They understood when predators hunted and where they fed. They learned to circle the aftermath of violence, to arrive after the kill, to steal what the killers left behind. It wasn't courage that kept them alive. It was timing and an uncanny sense of opportunity. The world's most dangerous creatures became their unwilling teachers. Some didn't make it. For everyone who survived the night, a dozen vanished, taken by fangs, fire, or famine. But each death taught the rest something new: where not to sleep, how to listen to wind, how to move as one when the air went still. And then came the giants. The earth itself seemed alive with movement. There were rhinos with armor-thick hides, hippos more aggressive than any predator, and flightless terror birds taller than a man, their beaks sharp enough to pierce bone. In this world, survival wasn't a right. It was an art, an endless dance between prey and predator. Yet amid the chaos, something extraordinary was happening. The more dangerous their world became, the faster their minds evolved. Fear became memory. Memory became strategy. A giant cat roars in the night. Instead of panic, the small band climbs higher into the trees, placing the youngest in the center, keeping the fireless dark at bay with watchful eyes. For the first time, they understand that unity is protection. In the age of monsters, weakness had forced intelligence, and that fragile spark, born out of terror, would one day ignite a species. At first, fire was only terror. It moved faster than any animal, devouring trees and running across the plains with a roar that turned day to orange night. The early humans fled before it, then cautiously, they returned. In the smoking silence that followed, they found something miraculous: warmth. Around the charred remains of antelope, they tasted cooked meat for the first time. It was softer, richer, easier to chew. And for the first time, they saw that destruction could also create. They couldn't make fire yet, but they learned to keep it, carrying embers in hollowed sticks, guarding them through rain and wind. Fire became more than protection. It was a signal. Wherever its light flickered, others gathered. By the riverbeds of Ethiopia and Kenya, stones began to change shape. A hand raised in frustration struck one rock against another, and the flake that broke off sliced through skin and sinew. The sound of that first strike was the beginning of technology. From that moment, the world would never again belong solely to the beasts. These crude, Oldowan tools, sharp flakes and heavy cores, turned scavengers into competitors. Bones that once went to hyenas were now cracked open by human hands. Marrow fed brains. Bigger brains demanded more food. More food demanded better tools. Evolution had found its feedback loop. Each innovation was born from desperation. When predators circled too close, they hurled stones to distract them. When meat ran scarce, they dug for roots, levering soil with pointed sticks. Slowly, thought itself became their greatest weapon, to imagine what did not yet exist, and then to make it real. The knowledge was no longer trapped in instinct. It could be taught. Around small groups, the first cultures formed, memories shared, skills passed down, warnings spoken. A lineage of learning had begun. Night returns. The ember they carry glows like a heartbeat. The predators still prowl beyond the light, but they keep their distance. For the first time in history, fear itself seems to retreat. Somewhere in that fragile circle of light, humanity took its first real breath. The world of monsters had not vanished, but the balance had shifted. The hunted were becoming something new, the thinkers, the makers, the keepers of fire. The land could no longer hold them. Seasons grew harsher, rivers vanished, herds moved farther each year. The same minds that had tamed fear now looked beyond the ridge and wondered what lay past it. Migration wasn't a choice, it was survival written in motion. They began to walk. Across the rift valleys of East Africa, through forests turned to dust and deserts newly born, they followed the rhythms of the earth itself. Every horizon was a gamble. New water, new prey, or death. Yet still they walked. Each generation carried its own small piece of knowledge. How to chip stone, how to find roots, how to read the sky. Over time, those pieces became a map, not of lines and borders, but of memory and direction. The great herds pulled them north. Cooler winds whispered of change. By 1 million years ago, descendants of these travelers, Homo erectus, had reached the edges of the unknown. They stood on shores where no human had ever stood before, watching the sunrise over lands that would one day be called Asia and Europe. For the first time, the species that began as prey had become a force of nature itself, spreading, adapting, learning with every step. Each new environment sculpted them further. Lighter skins under weaker suns, stronger legs for endless walking, minds sharper with every problem solved. They carried fire wherever they went. It became their constant star, burning against the night in every corner of the world they reached. And so, from a handful of frightened survivors on an African plain, came a lineage that would fill the planet. Not through domination, but through persistence, the quiet genius of never stopping, of always finding a way. The long journey did more than spread humans across the earth. It rewired their minds. With every new land came new challenges, and with every challenge, the mind grew bolder. They no longer saw the world only as it was. They began to see what it could be. At first, communication was breath and movement, calls, cries, rhythm tapped on wood or stone. But somewhere deep in a cave, a hand pressed pigment to rock. A streak of red, a curve, a memory made visible. For the first time, thought left the mind and became something the world could see. These were more than decorations. They were messages, stories, prayers. Each mark held meaning. A hunt remembered, a spirit honored, a lesson passed to those yet unborn. The cave became a memory made of stone, the first book of humanity. Language had already begun its quiet revolution. Words rose from rhythm and breath, becoming symbols that carried emotion, instruction, and warning. With language came imagination, the power to describe what was not there, to plan, to dream, to invent. Now they could teach without showing, lead without being seen, remember without witnessing. Thought itself became immortal. The carvings and paintings spread across Africa, then Europe, then the world. Mammoths on stone, handprints in red ochre, constellations mapped in flickering light, each image a whisper across millennia. We were here, we saw, we remembered. Through these creations, they built a bridge across time. The knowledge that had once vanished with every generation now survived through art and story. The human mind had broken the silence of nature and replaced it with meaning. From survival came awareness. From awareness came beauty, and beauty became our proof of existence. The world these early humans called home was not just alive, it was unstable. After millions of years of quiet change, Earth itself was restless. Volcanoes, storms, earthquakes, and fire shaped every day of their lives. The predators were deadly, but the planet was far more dangerous. When they left the shelter of trees to hunt or scavenge, they faced skies that could turn against them in minutes. Warm air rising from the Rift Valley collided with cold from the highlands, and wind became a weapon. Tornadoes tore across the plains, twisting trees from the ground, hurling debris through the air. There was no warning, only a deep pressure in the chest, a silence before the storm. They ran when the sky began to roar. The clever ones found hollows between rocks, pressed their bodies flat against the earth. The unlucky were taken, lifted, broken, lost to the dust. But every storm left lessons. They learned where the wind struck hardest, where the land dipped low enough to hide. Knowledge was survival, and nature was their harshest teacher. Fire too came from the sky. A single bolt could ignite a dry plain, turning day into a wall of flame. They learned to read the smell of ozone, to move against the wind, to seek the bare patches where grass couldn't burn. Out of terror came adaptation, a primitive geography written in memory and fear. The ground beneath them was no safer. Beneath East Africa, tectonic forces were tearing the continent apart, splitting the earth into deep valleys and ridges. Whole hillsides could crumble without warning. Earthquakes rolled through their camps like the breath of a god, toppling boulders, changing rivers overnight. When the land shook, they fled toward open ground. The oldest among them could feel it before it came, a stillness in the air, the birds vanishing all at once. Each tremor carved new instincts into their blood. And when it was over, they returned, exploring the fractures, learning the new shapes of their home. Those shifting lands also gave them gifts. Quakes exposed new stones, obsidian, basalt, flint, sharp and strong. They learned to recognize the sparkle of a good edge, to use nature's violence as opportunity. Every disaster brought something they could use, but sometimes the sky itself betrayed them. Once in a lifetime, the heavens would blaze. A ball of fire would tear through the sky, trailing smoke and thunder. The air would shake. Sometimes the ground would erupt in flame or shatter under the impact. The memory of these moments became legend long before language. Perhaps, around their small fires, they stared at the scars left behind and wondered if the world was angry. For them, the line between nature and the divine did not exist. A meteor's flash, a tremor in the soil, the death of a tree, all were part of the same living force. They didn't name it, but they felt it, feared it, and respected it. This was the first religion of humankind, awe. Each new catastrophe bound them closer. The storms made them run together. The fires made them share shelter. The quakes made them cling to one another for balance. In fighting the earth, they found each other. When the rains finally came, the dry rivers roared back to life. Torrents cut new channels, drowning the lowlands. Those who learned to climb survived, gripping wet bark, hauling children to safety. The world was a constant test, and every trial selected those who could think faster, move quicker, trust deeper. And still, they endured. They learned the rhythm of destruction, the way the planet breathed in chaos and exhaled calm. Between storms, they scavenged what the floods revealed: drowned animals, uprooted plants, the strange stones left behind by the river. Curiosity began to grow beside fear. Each disaster wrote itself into their instincts. The smell of rain meant movement. The tremor of ground meant escape. The flicker of light on the horizon meant shelter now. Slowly, the chaos of nature became a language they could read. When they looked at the night sky after a meteor's passing, they no longer saw only threat. They saw light in darkness, a spark across the void,
something like their own fire, alive and fleeting. Maybe they didn't understand it, but in those brief moments of wonder, the seeds of imagination were planted. From predators, they had learned fear. From storms, they learned movement. From fire, they learned light. From the earth itself, they learned resilience. Every mountain that fell and every storm that passed left them stronger, more aware, more human. They were not masters of the planet, not yet, but they were its most attentive students. Through wind and quake, through ash and flood, they endured. And in doing so, they forged the first truth of humanity, that survival is not the absence of fear, but the will to face it, again and again. For millions of years, the world had tried to erase them. Every storm, every predator, every trembling of the earth had been a test. But still, they endured. Against a planet that burned, froze, and shifted beneath their feet, they refused to disappear. They weren't the strongest or the fastest. They couldn't fly or roar or hide behind armor. What they had was something else. Awareness. The ability to notice, to remember, to adapt. It was a quiet kind of strength, one born from suffering, sharpened by fear, and guided by curiosity.
Each danger had taught them something. From predators, they learned unity. From storms, they learned where to hide. From fire, they learned control. From the earth's fury, they learned to anticipate. Every disaster etched new wisdom into their minds, pushing them towards something greater. The world around them was chaos, yet they began to find patterns in that chaos. They watched the seasons change, the stars move, the rivers rise and vanish. Slowly, understanding replaced terror. The earth was no longer just an enemy, it was a teacher. Perhaps in the glow of that fire, they began to see themselves reflected, small, fragile sparks in an endless dark, surviving not through strength, but through connection. They had learned that a single flame, guarded together, could outlast the storm, and so they carried it forward. Fire became memory, memory became knowledge, knowledge became survival. They moved when the land demanded it, followed life wherever it led. Each step was a promise that they would not vanish. Their footprints, washed by rain and time, marked the beginning of every journey that would ever follow. They didn't know what they were becoming. They didn't know that one day their descendants would build cities, sail oceans, and reach for the stars. But in their endurance, in every trembling breath and cautious heartbeat, they were already shaping the future. 4.7 million years ago, the planet was wild and merciless, and from that chaos rose the first spark of humanity, fragile, uncertain, but unyielding. Every life since, every story told, every dream imagined, carries their echo. We are their survival, given form, because long before we conquered the earth, we learned how to live with it.